Once again, I'm back here doing a little thing for Veil of Sound in connection with Consouling Sounds, and I'm very pleased to have Bart from Barst and his companion Niels here, who are also contributing to the 24 hours of deep listening event at the beginning of October with something, can I say, very unique, Bart? Because I think unique already because everybody only turns 50 once.
Well, oh, that's already a tough one there.
I know, but I
Uh,
was just trying to say that if I'm right, the idea started somewhere along thoughts about what to do for your 50th birthday, right?
that's true,
But let me assure you, you don't look a day older than 49.
yeah. Yeah, that's true. I wanted to make a 15-minute piece of music just to set up that number, that magic number, to set it out there. And then I had Mike from Consoling on the phone, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna do this." And Mike immediately said, "No, we will make a release about it, blah blah blah." And then I talked to Niels, and then yeah, like always, we just lost ourselves, and it became a huge thing.
It is a huge thing, I totally agree with that, but not only in the sense that it's huge in the way of production, but I also think it's a huge thing if we place it in the context of the 24-hour deep listening and also within your oeuvre, which now has been going on for many years, Bart. But let's stick to the collaboration with Consouling Sounds. Um, how did the collaboration with the label itself get started?
Oh, uh, well, in fact, I was doing a documentary project uh, where I got to know Mike, and yeah, that immediately we hit it off. And I just told him, "Hey, I'm also making some music here." And then he came to one of my living room concerts, and then he offered me a to release my music on Consoling Sounds. And then a friendship grew out of there. And he's also kind of always pushing me to go beyond the
So then
expected.
we not only have to thank you two for the immensely satisfying and gratifying new thing that you just did called Real, but also in a way Mike. So thank you, Mike.
Sure
Um,
thing. Yeah.
but Bart, you once described your music as Wahnsinnsmusik, German, and literally translated into English, meaning something like lunatic music or lunacy music, however you wanna describe it or translate it. How much lunacy is in this new project? Not lunacy as like a mental state, but like I guess that it was like an immense project.
I think none.
Cool. But was the organizing and preparing and all of that must have been a longer process, or was it so spontaneous?
No. This was kind of a, this project was something that we worked on quite hard. And this was also a very, Niels has been in Barst really, from the beginning, we have been exchanging. I think the first thing I organized was Visions of Resonance, Niels. Yes, and it was kind of a art exposition mixed with concerts. And I contacted Niels and I asked him to put some of his art there also. And from then on, we are collaborating. Niels is for me a part of Barst.
Niels, congratulations, because being part of such a project, I guess it's immensely satisfying and gratifying. When I think about your music, and you've also already mentioned that, I always have a feeling that you are not out there with the intention of doing something to break down another barrier, but you always are. You end up breaking barriers. So, how must you go about writing, organizing, in this case, filming, in order to get something out of it which, again, breaks down barriers and genres?
So what is the question then?
How do you go about organizing your work so that in the end it always ends up breaking barriers, pushing something further?
This is what we do. I don't think
So,
I just think it is, we do not want to repeat ourselves, even though we
that is
make
definitely something you don't do.
even though we make repetitive music. But yeah, what has been done. So let's go to the next level then. And it's not wanting to go to the next level, it is just happening.
Then my notion is right on that one. Real. You call it an experience, and I totally agree. Can one of you explain how you came up with the name? Was it first, or was it something that you gave a project later on? Real. Or real.
I like Real. What do you think, Niels?
Either works for me.
But, like, how real is Real?
I think 100%.
Yeah, it's 100% Barst, right?
It's 100% real.
Also, true. And thank you for having, or for letting me watch it first. I can already assure everybody who sees it, it is a real experience.
Or
But
real.
there are also so many things that I could come up with, and I just made up a few things, or I came up with a few things that I wanted to ask you to. For me, like, one thing always, of course, has to do with production, and of course, when doing a project like this, we end up with a variation of the old question, what comes first, chicken or egg? So in this context, what came first? Music or pictures?
Both.
Simultaneously? Really?
The process, we worked on this process together.
Yeah.
Simultaneously. Working out the ID, writing, composing, preparing the filming, because we rented some really high-end gear, and so we had a week of filming, and So we were preparing that week, you know, writing down the scenario, the narrative, what do we want to express here, and that influenced, of course, also the composing, and the composing influenced the filming, and then montage again influenced composing. So it is really an achievement of the group.
So, am I understanding you correctly that you, Bart, changed parts of the music during the process?
Yes.
And Niels, you changed like the storyline also? Did you write a real storyboard?
Well, the process kind of changed a little bit during its during the work because we generally start from a more, how do you say, standard idea, and then we completely break it down. And so in the end, we ended up basically editing and changing parts of the music simultaneously, which is maybe not the most standard and practical way to do it, but we don't do standard and practical because we always like to make it very stressful and difficult for ourselves. And lose sleep over that. But in the end, yeah, that's how we've always done it. And so in this case, while I was editing the film, I had some rough parts, and I would basically send Bart something daily. We would Zoom every day, and because we obviously are quite some miles apart. And so he would change music, and then he would send me new music, and I would change the film again. So in the end, it was very organic right up until the end, when you finally have to stop and dial it in. But yeah, it was really, yeah, we really truly did everything together simultaneously. So chicken or egg was kind of there almost at the same time, so to speak.
Interesting. But on the other hand, I must agree, when rethinking in my head right now how the movie came to me and how I felt it, yeah, it's true. It all flows together in a very, very wonderful way. I mean, like, of course, I just want to ask a few very simple things before we get to the harder stuff. Is there any kind of movie, or maybe also sound, aka music, that inspired you for real?
I'm lately into the more ambient stuff, and also the very repetitive the earth vibe. There is also a bonus track from that also lasts, what is it, half an hour, which is on the CD, which finally didn't make it because it was a it was just standing out there on its own, so we just released it as an extra track, but it is the same thing. So it's I still listen to really heavy stuff, but I listen to a lot of classical and ambient stuff, electronic stuff, the John Hopkins things, really very broad.
And Niels, anything that inspired you for the story? Any movie or anything else?
No, not for the story per se, because the story just kind of kind of came to life from just us discussing what we wanted to do. So there wasn't a real inspiration for the story. Of course, I have my inspirations from film and art that I really like. I mean, I love David Lynch and Tarkovsky, so there are some things that I use from that, at least from in the way of process. But no, the inspiration was mostly just the music, and also because we've been working together very long. It's mostly that I get triggered a lot by the music and by knowing that, being on that same level, and also the environment that we shot it in was very inspirational, and the process itself was a big inspiration. So not just the actual filming and actions of doing these things, but discussing these things and watching the idea kind of come to life into this very bizarre method of working that we tend to do. So that's the only inspiration I can really name off the top of my head that stands out.
Self-sufficient inspiration could be the thing for the future. So thank you very much. I like that very much. Now,
but we wanted to. Also, one of the bases was the huge life change I've been through by moving into the woods, and the impact it has on the mind, on everything, was kind of a. How would you explain this, Niels?
It started everything. It was basically the lifeblood of this project, in a way. If you're talking in an artistic sense, it was the lifeblood of this project. I mean, it was the instigator was maybe the 50th birthday thing, but it was also the fact that Bart had this life-changing event of just moving to this completely isolated part of a country where you're so far away from society, And that was a very big inspiration, I suppose, in terms of themes and ideas, and also the language that you want to bring across in the image.
Interesting. I don't want to go too far into it because we don't want to give away anything from the experience. But yeah, it seemed the way you described it. I can imagine some of Bart being in there and not being in there at the same time. When I watched it, at first I thought it was a movie about the different stages of being, from birth through life to death, and even beyond, because I had a feeling that life after death, or what happens to the material after the death of life, so something like decay, is also part of the movie. Am I completely off there, or did you want to show that in a way?
Well, in fact, the Western Lands, the album, is on the afterlife. This is real. This is about this life. And the possibility of having, I don't know, to have a complete change, breakthrough, I don't know.
A metamorphosis.
Yeah, something like that.
It's more. I think it's more about life itself than anything as ethereal as afterlife. But I suppose the decay is part of it, because decay is part of life, or change. So I suppose themes like that. But it's interesting that you bring out that interpretation, because it's also something that we were really curious about, and are curious about, how people interpret what is shown, because we don't want to tell people what it is. We want people to experience it themselves. So that's also why it's interesting.
Will come up with many different ideas about it.
Hopefully.
Another idea that struck me was somehow the conflict, in inverted commas, the conflict between nature and culture, nature and mankind. And, where do we place ourselves in nature?
Mm.
Is that something that drove you? I mean, like Bart, you moved into rural part of the country. Is that part of what you were striving for?
Yes.
This nature versus culture thing?
No, not versus, but reintegrate into nature.
Yeah. And how do you integrate into your place nowadays? Do you make
Like,
yeah, how do you go, how do you live your life? Like how do you integrate yourself into this rural environment that you live in nowadays?
it's like having the biggest adventure of my life.
Good. Um, I also thought that it has to be, or in some ways, it shows something like autarky. You know, like mankind placing itself within nature, and also, you know, like where are we? Where is our place? Right.
Yeah.
And what struck me, Niels, were those really rich and lush pictures that you did for the movie. Um, did you already choose some of the locations before, or did you more or less go through the area and shot the things where you thought, okay, that's a good part for Real?
I think we did both. Obviously, because we had to work for a large part remote beforehand in the preparation due to obvious, reasons, and we couldn't travel so easily. A lot of stuff like any locations that we did, we kind of researched online together, like with sharing images. And I did a part we did just going out. So it's a bit of both. And I visited Bart before, so I had a general idea about the area. It's also just an area where you can basically throw a rock and hit a very beautiful place. So it's not difficult to just walk off a trail and find something beautiful.
So is that where you live right now, Bart? Is that
Yes.
your place of residence?
Yes. Well, not.
I think Real is a good name for that.
Yeah, but I don't live at that place. I live in that nature.
Okay.
Okay. But that place, well, I did some preparation by going to, by making pictures of the different locations. So Niels already had quite a good idea of his angles before even arriving.
You go ahead.
Yeah, I think we had that primal idea of nature and mankind in it. That was the driver. That was the message. Not the narrative or whatever you want to call it. And with the different locations prepared, and also lots of Niels just chasing the perfect shot in that week itself. It was very organic. There was a lot of preparation, but there was still enough room in our process, it is possible that we create something and that we see, okay, let's throw it all away and do something completely different as part of the process. This could have happened also. It didn't, but it could have.
So on the one side, it's very pre-organized, and on the other side, it's very spontaneous. It sounds, for me, not being a part of it, highly complicated, but you've already described it as like very, very much the way that you operate. But let's get back to that idea of autarky. of man in nature or man surrounded by nature. How did you go about incorporating that idea into the story? Because, you know, yeah, Niels, how did you come up with it? How did you go about it?
Well,
Why
we
those
both
specific
did.
shots?
I mean,
Yeah,
for
sorry.
a large for a large part, we both did, because I mean, it's not the thing is about this, especially this. Like before, when we did something, it was generally Bart needing a video or an art, and then I would make that in you know in cooperation with him. And now this was the first time. I think that's also why this project is just very different in its vibe. Is that we really worked everything we did together. So I did nothing. You know, we never did anything truly solo. You know, it's not like I did this and he did that. Sure, I held the camera for the most part, but everything was kind of done in conjunction with each other. But yeah, we were just very inspired by, like, for me, Bart's story of moving there is just a very simple click. It's a very simple inspiration. I visited the location once, so that clicked already. I am very fascinated by the idea of mankind in nature, you know, like returning to that primal heartbeat. That's something more rhythmic. It's almost like you could akin it to the idea of a mantra, you know, like something very rhythmic, also which harkens back to the music.
Totally.
Something that is just completely stripped down. I'm not sure if this movie is, but but it's these kind of themes that kind of served as an inspiration to me, and also to kind of keep me on a certain path and not stray too far into nonsensical things that don't matter. And for that also, we are very much on the same line, because Bart operates like that when he makes his music as well. So there's, you know, obviously we have our some things that one says, I don't like that, or let's change that, but generally we tend to really flow well together. So it's not one clear cut thing that I can say, okay, this was the inspiration. It was all, the entire process was the inspiration, and knowing the location, our friendship, our previous collaborations, and also just, I mean, obviously I'm not in Bart's shoes, but I do like the story of him moving there. I really much can link to that story. So it was all these tiny little things that all together made the core of this. I don't want to call it a story, but this experience that we try to then portray.
Could you envision yourself doing the same thing, moving into an isolated area and placing yourself within nature?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, there's no such thing here in the Netherlands, but I mean, yeah, I mean, wouldn't put it beyond the realm of possibility, for sure.
Barst is known for, as you said, never repeating something. You know, true, it's repetitive music, definitely, but the project is always some kind of shifting shapes, right? So is this here also like a place where we can see Barst shifting into another, I do not want to say incarnation, but shifting its own shape once again?
Definitely. And this is not premeditated. It is just happening over and over. It is not like, okay, let's do something. No, we love to work together. We inspire each other. We push each other really across the limit. And this is what happens then.
Niels mentioned the idea of friendship. Thinking about it, there is something very, very positive about Real. To me, it pervaded an immensely satisfying and gratifying feeling. I felt really good while watching it. I guess that's also because of your own friendship, right?
Maybe, but we definitely, this was a topic at some point where we were talking. I think it was before actually filming, where we did discuss like, how do we want this to look? And the thing is, when you go into a forest, especially one that is being hit by a huge flood, and everything is raining and cold and gray, the risk that if you're not careful, it will look like, you know, a black metal video, or where, you know, people trudging through the woods, or cold and wet, and we didn't want that. It wasn't a negative story. It's for us, it's about transformation. It's actually very beautiful. We thought like, okay, we don't want to make something that is metal and it needs to be, we want to express what a sort of positivity, you know, a sort of beauty. So that's also something we were very actively aware of, that when doing everything, basically, that it doesn't become some gloomy. I mean, sure, it can be a little gloomy, but you know, it shouldn't be overwhelmingly that. It should also have a positive and maybe hopeful note. I don't know if hopeful is the right word, but that's the way we felt about it. At least speaking for myself.
I would say so too. I would definitely say so too. If anybody sees something gloomy in that thing, then to me it's overinterpretation.
Sure, but I think Niels touched something here, which is, so we rented gear to make this movie. So we fixed the week where we would shoot. And this week was the week of the big flood.
Yeah.
No, Belgium was hit with hundreds of people dying. Germany also. Yeah. That was then.
The area where I come from too, yeah.
Well, that was when we filmed. So we didn't plan that. We couldn't go and return the camera and say, hey, no. So we just were also in that state of being in that area where the floods hit. And meanwhile, bringing our story. Meanwhile, in the evenings when coming back from filming, being confronted with the news of what is happening. And still making, you know, it makes sense. You can feel the power of the water in this.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And on the other hand, it makes it even more impressive, because thinking about that, I didn't know that. Thinking about it, it makes it even more impressive that you come up with something that is not dark, that is not gloomy, that doesn't show nature as this whole destructive thing. I still say it's a very, very positive, hopeful experience. Yes. And that makes it even more impressive. Maybe that also goes along with what I was thinking about. When I looked at it, there are some shots which show traces. And that is something that I also thought about. Traces of, or remnants of life. Natural life, cultural life, however we want to call it, both. I guess those are some things that just happened on the go, right? Finding that spot and seeing it, filming it, right?
No.
Okay, so that was also already part of your idea before you shot? Wow.
Yes.
Wow. And is that something that also like occupied your idea, or occupied your mind, like traces of life?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Maybe Niels can explain it better, but definitely, yes, this was the whole thing.
Now I get. So those traces are real traces.
Real, yeah. Yes.
It's amazing. I've already watched it 3 times in the last 4 days. I guess I'm gonna sit down after this and watch it once more, owing all of these things. Of course, the project, the experience has 2 sides. One, you said, and I totally understand, that it is a very symbiotic way of working. But there is still this thing that there is music to it, and the music is somewhere between ambient. I felt as if there was a little bit of shoegaze in it. There are also faint traces of metal in it. But one thing that you mentioned, Bart, was repetition. Is the repetition like a symbol of our heartbeat, of our life?
It's more, again, I don't know.
What is it for you?
Well, I can give it a description which I have in my mind, but maybe it's not even that, you know? I don't know. I think that it is the Barst experiences are, in my feeling, always experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it is influenced by the mantra,
Mm-hmm.
by the repetition.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say it's an hypnosis, but it's a repetition in which you get into the zone, in which you can, if you're into this, you know, because I think 99.9% of the world population will not like this, but for those who enjoy it, it is not losing yourselves, but really getting into this other place mentally.
Is it something like tune in and drop out? Without the need of psychedelic drugs?
No. No, because tuning drop out is more about society, I think.
Definitely.
And this is more about the mind.
So it's more about not escaping from society, but more about introspection?
Yes. 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 Introspection as in introspection, but also introspection and going beyond and getting in touch with the real experience which life is, without having those million thoughts which are running through your head the entire time, and being able to get in that original real place.
It's just so fascinating. You say you cannot describe it, and then at the same time you express it so well. One thing that we should mention to everybody who watches it before seeing and experiencing Real, please do it the way I did it. Put on good headphones, sit back, and don't do anything else. Put your mobile away. Just let yourself be immersed in it, because that's the way I did it, and It is soothing. It is calming. It is very positive. And before I come to like a cinematic question, it has a very, very harmonious conclusion or ending. Intentional or spontaneous?
Talking about the film or the
Both.
music part?
I think both is like it's a very harmonious and harmonic ending and conclusion.
Well, we had an idea of how we wanted to end it, and then Bart suddenly sent me this new version, and I was so insanely struck by that version that I basically tailored the entire. I basically put in the last shot and started working my way back because I knew when I heard the ending what the last shot had to be. Because the ending just it really slapped me around. It was really very emotional for me, that ending.
Yeah.
So in that case, the music definitely helped me to just decide, okay, it has to end like this. Because it was so powerful for me. Because I was, I was editing my way from start to finish, and we were doing the music, kind of, finding the parts, and so it was very much working at the same time. But that ending just. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if for Bud it was spontaneous, but for me, when I heard it, I knew exactly how it should end,
Mm.
And I think when I sent it to Bart back, he was like, "Yeah, this is the ending," So, unless my memory is foggy, but
no, that's true.
Did you compartmentalize the thing?
Yes.
Yeah. So you also compartmentalized the music.
Yes. And also the description of the emotion we wanted to capture was described before anything was done.
Wow. Okay.
So we really wrote it down, which was an interesting process, starting really from a white sheet, not from a sound, not from an image, but really from a white sheet. This is the intention we want to capture, which we already talked about. So this was written down. And then, so this ending was written down as how we wanted it to be experienced. And so, music was created on those words then.
Were those words or sentences?
Sentences, yes.
Wow. Okay. Being a bit of a film geek, I have to admit, Niels, how time consuming and time intensive was it to get those shots very sharp, very detail rich, very lush? How time consuming was that?
Well, it was definitely not made easier by the fact that we had the rain beating down on us just all day long. Thank God modern technology and cameras actually make life a lot easier. So it was, we were actually able to work quite fast also because we had a plan each day what we were going to do. So we were actually for our normal, how we normally are, we were very organized. So actually we were able to really work quite fast. Honestly, it's just modern cameras are so much easier to get everything sharp than 5 years ago. So the last time when we worked together on a film project, it was more difficult than now, even with the nature just hammering down on us for all week long. So and everything else, the editing is just desk work. So
I would leave out the just.
Yeah.
Because this was kind of a. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but you both are too humble. you don't give anything to the other. You both are very, very humble persons. So whenever I watched it, I felt like, okay, those are two people who really know what they're doing. There is nothing amateurish about it. It's like two people.
I'm happy
really
you. I'm happy you think that. Keep thinking
I'm
that.
happy you think that also.
No, guys. Don't sell yourself for nothing. One other question. Niels,
Yes.
you have a lot of very open shots, but also very many closed shots.
Yes.
That was already prepared, I guess, right? So you already had in mind, okay, we need some shot like that, very, very vast, very, very big,
Yeah.
and some boxed in shots, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the nature was so extraordinarily important that we wanted to capture that vastness as well.
Yeah.
So obviously we were gonna have a lot of shots like that, and for my own, I generally do more photography. So I think when I made this, I think way more in a photography term than a film term, maybe, just automatically. So those kind of big nature shots are just something I thought fit very well, and so we were like all day like, oh, take this and capture that, and we should get this, and yeah, it's a candy store in that area. It's just there's so much beauty there that you could basically go on forever and never run out of beautiful vistas to photograph. But yeah, I think the mix of boxed in and wide shots were very intentional because we wanted to focus on certain moments for sure, but we never want to forget and leave out that vastness of the nature that we were encapsulated in that moment. So
yeah, and there's also something very majestic about it.
Yeah, sure, it is very majestic because it's majestic to be there. You know, it's that also that feeling. I mean, sure, the weather was awful, but there's also something very beautiful about standing in that fury, you know, and the area is already beautiful on its own and the nature, but then you have that extra bit of the rain just pounding down on you all day long. That does add something also to the experience that we felt when we made it.
Did you, in some ways, also, as human beings with a lifespan of somewhere between 40 and 80, I don't know, did you also feel some kind of small? And compared to that, like, vast, imposing nature?
Well, I did, but I don't live in that kind of nature daily. So when I'm there, it's already like, whoa. You know, I live a kilometer from Amsterdam, so it's like, yeah, I don't have that here, you know. So maybe for Bart, I don't know. For him, maybe it's more normal nowadays, but for me, it's like, oh,
a tree,
a tree,
a real tree,
a real tree, birds.
I have a 45-minute drive to go to the store.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And when I go to a city or something and I come back, each time I'm like, holy fuck, I'm here. And I'm doing this, you know?
Would you say that this is also somehow the place where you are right now, meant to be?
Oh, meant to be, you know? If the universe dictates it, I've got nothing to. I'm just.
You don't have nothing.
Free flowing here, you know. But it's a really, yeah, it's a crazy experience. It's really amazing, and I'm really, really grateful that I was able to add this to this experience, which life is. This is so different, and I'm here every day, and every day I'm struck by, wow, this is the world.
This is planet Earth.
Yes.
I have one question because I didn't clearly see that. Have you, for the musical part, collaborated with somebody on this project, or is this 100% Bart?
No, this is 100% Barst.
Yes.
the entire project.
Yeah.
And for me, Barst is a kind of collective of artists, which has shaped, which has changed. But reflecting on it, I noticed, and we noticed, that in fact Niels has been in it since the beginning. So we also wanted to emphasize that this is Barst. This is work of this collective. So the one cannot go without the other. So if today you ask me who and what is Barst, then I say Niels, Charles, and Bart. So this is what this is. And so, yeah, to answer your question, yes, Charles is also a member of this collective.
Who worked on Real. Very, very interesting. I just looked at it and I saw, once again, doing a little bit of research, I saw with how many people you collaborated. And I also revisited some of the things that you've done before, like, you know, having one of my heroes, Mike Armin of Rosetta, on one of the records, and at the same time also Karen Willems and Nicolas van. I know I'm gonna mispronounce it, but Merhege. I don't know if I in any way.
It's quite okay. That's not bad.
So I just, and then I felt something again where I totally correspond with you. I never had the feeling that whenever I listened to one of those works where I knew, okay, this is Mark, this is Mike, this is Karen, this is Nicholas, I never had the feeling as if anybody was standing out. It's always a collective effort, and that is also something that is very, very obvious in Real, in real. Last thing, in a few days, next week actually, Bart, you have to go to a city again. You have to go to Ghent.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah. What can we expect from your performance at the 24-hour deep listening event?
What you experienced?
So you're gonna put this on as a stage performance experience?
Yes. So we will have a massive screen.
Wow.
Where we will project the images, and then we will play the music live.
Wow. I cannot wait to see and experience it. I cannot but thank you for the experience that I had with Real. I know it must have been a huge ride for all the people involved, the whole collective. But from the outside perspective, heartfelt thank you. I would have said that about any other of your works as well, about any of your other records, but this one, to me, stands out a little bit more. I don't know why it has. Very warm feeling. So thank you for that. Everybody, the experience will be live, as we just heard, at the 24 Hours of Deep Listening event in Ghent. The record will also be out on that day, right?
Yes.
I know what I have to get myself, and everybody else should also. Go get it, sit back, put on good headphones if you cannot be there, and dive into Real. Thank you very much, Niels and Bart, for the interview.
Thank you, man.